we're still very much at the main economies in the region run by consultants. When you look at the money went to McKinsey from the region last year, we're talking millions of dollars going to McKinsey, going to Deloitte, going to EY. This is not a place where any entrepreneurial activity could happen. Those are not builders. I heard of an accelerator in the region managed by PwC. What? How? Why? Number one is a technical co-founder, or preferably a technical founder. 2 is enough money to sustain the founders for a year. 3 is agree on roles and on equities and everything the founders eventually end up fighting over. 4 is you're a prophet. If you do not believe you're a prophet who is about to change the way people live their lives, entrepreneurship is not for you. If you are 22 years old who never worked in banking, don't come and tell me you're going to disrupt the central bank. Very unlikely, near impossible for you to do that because you don't even know how a bank works. I think I'm excited the most about Tabby. I think they're solving a huge problem in the region. They're the 5th largest buy now, pay later in the world now. And I'm very happy for them. I'm very, very proud of what they have built. I think I'm very, very excited about Gameball. That's a company founded by an Egyptian founder. It literally serves the world from day one. They help you with your loyalty program. I'm very, very excited about Instabug, which is also technically an Egyptian founder who I think still have most of his people in Egypt, but he have a massive office in Silicon Valley and just hired a CEO and just stepped down and hired another person to run the company. And that's an insane level of maturity that we rarely see in the region.
Many entrepreneurs will tell you that they stand alone, self-made successes built on nothing but $1 in their pocket and a brain on their shoulders. But that's a lie. We are all standing on the shoulders of giants. Nothing is done in isolation. Everybody gets help. And one of the key figures when it comes to startups and entrepreneurship in the MENA region today is Salah. Over the last decade or so, Mo's been heading up organisations like Techstars, Seedstars, Unido and Brink, and he's also the founder behind the Formula One inspired Founders Paddock, and most currently, country manager at Startup Grind. He's also a founding partner at Pitlane Ventures. So if you're curious to know how to make it as a startup in the Middle East and North Africa, keep listening. I'm Dan from AraGeek.com. Salah, welcome to Founders Voice.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here with you, and I'm a huge fan of AraGeek, and I think I grew up being a fan, and I think Mellins has built a great platform, and it was one of the first in the region, and I'm a very happy customer.
I mean, I'd say thank you, but I can't take credit for it. As you well know, that's all up to Mellins on high. So we thank him both dutifully for his efforts. But with that, let's talk startups, seeing as, I mean, I was trying to find the right way to summarize this, and I cannot find a better phrase than the Yoda of startups, but you don't look old enough for that.
I don't think I'd love to be called Yoda, and if you told me that piece of information before, I would have brought all my Star Wars stuff behind me, and I would have worn an actual Yoda T-shirt. But I haven't gotten the right briefing, so okay. For our round 2, I promise you to wear a Yoda T-shirt.
Sold. I'll come back at you with something from Star Trek, though, most likely. Don't fight me.
You know nothing, and I never watched a minute of it.
Yeah.
Well, this is not the show for that, but definitely go spend some time checking it out. Definitely start with Next Generation. But anyway, move on. I mean, I say this because as I know we covered this in the intro, but still, the fact that you're working at Startup Grind and Seedstars and you founded Founders Paddock. There's just everything you do seems to be about helping build new businesses. And so what does a startup need in its early days to have a shot at success? That's a really simple question. Before we get into your credentials and how you know all this, if you're coming in day one of a startup, what's the first thing you should be doing?
I call it usually day zero. So I think there's a few things has to be done before you actually start. And if they're not there, you're, I'm not saying you're not going to be successful, but your chances at being successful is going to be very much lower. Let's not say insanely low, much lower. Number one, you have enough money to sustain yourself for the next 12 months. If you don't have enough money to sustain yourself for the next 12 months, life is going to be insanely hard. Number one. Number two is, and before I go to number two, and before I say sustain yourself for a 12-month, I don't mean sustain yourself 12 months going to Rivera in the summer. I mean just eating the cheapest meal possible 3 times a day.
Subsistence living.
Yes. If you have a wife and kids, they do not have to pay for that. So their expenses has to be there. And you have to really have a very honest conversation with them about how life is going to get harder, especially on the emotional and on your presence side, because the first couple of years of your startup, you're barely going to be present anywhere with family, with friends, and across the board. So number one is get ready financially. Have enough money to sustain yourself for a year. Number two is you're either a technical founder or have a technical founder. And what I mean by a technical founder here is not finding a developer somewhere to build whatever you think is right. A technical co-founder to me means a founder who have a massive engineering background, someone who have built something before, preferably someone you worked with. And my favorite scenario is you are a great technical founder or an engineer who is becoming a founder who goes and find a business partner or an operations partner. The greatest companies in history was not founded by Tim Cox. They were founded by Steve Wozniak. So without a technical partner, I don't see a reason to give you $1 of funding. That's these two things on day one. If they're not there, it's hard for me to see you successful. And I haven't seen much success without these. There is a few outliers, but they cannot be generalized. And there are a few, like they're less than 10, like they achieved breakthrough success. And just to be fair here, I'm not talking here about starting a startup by the dictionary meaning. I'm talking here about starting a startup by the Silicon Valley meaning. You're starting.
Yeah,
I
think a lot of people don't get this. That it's got a very specific definition in the technical world, and like, this blew me away the first time I tried to set up a company. I had no idea, like, how much of a sort of formal industry it is. It's not come up with an idea and hope you can sell it. There's like a whole industry and engine behind that.
And recent hordes will tell you we're a product-led VC. So without engineer, things not going to go anywhere. YC will tell you the same. But in Silicon Valley, a startup is a movement, is a new religion, and the founder is its profit. I'm not talking here about starting a business that brings in a few $1 million. I'm talking here about businesses that brings billions of dollars, eventually become a $1 trillion company, and that's way more important than anything else, changes the way people live their lives. So if you are not about to change how people live their lives in a way that the world will never be the same again, reconsider becoming a founder. Honestly, there is so many other things to do in the world, because this is a very lonely, bumpy, hurtful journey that has a 99% chance at failure.
Absolutely. One of the things that annoys me, and you've probably experienced this and seen this, when people have a hobby that they're good at, people say, oh, you should do this as a business. But it's like,
no, please,
when
no.
you're good at something, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you're good at running a business that does that something. It's the same as work. It's like the equivalent
unless you're really good at building and you go find
but
someone
that's a
to sell
different
it.
thing.
Because Steve Wozniak on his own would have built 3 Apple ones, one for his girlfriend, one for himself, and one for Steve Jobs, and the 4th one would have been built to go around tech shows and show it and make himself feel good being around those tech conventions. And guys, I've come up with something no one else could have done. And Steve Jobs was like, what are you saying? Like, we have a $1 trillion opportunity on our hand, and you want to go around and show it off. And then that's the thing with hobbies. You want to show off more than anything else. Like, for example, myself, I'm a huge Formula One fan, for example. Would I ever drive a Formula One car? No. Can I possibly tell you every single piece of information about every single car on the grid? Yes. But can I drive it? No. Can I build it? No.
Fair enough. Yeah, I get that. I feel like it's very similar in the working world. I'm just thinking sort of for the wider audiences, we see this across all businesses, this idea that if you're good at something, you're necessarily good at managing that something. Whether that's because you're running the business or because you're now, and because I think it's the same if you're running a business and you've got employees, being careful about how you encourage them and incentivize them, because I think the default idea if you're running a business is, well, if you have a subordinate working for you and they're very good at their job, well, then you should hire more people to do that and then they can manage those people. But if you've never given them management training, why would they be good at managing people?
There is something else that a lot of people, I guess, miss other than your point on managing people. Managing shareholders. Your ultimate role as a CEO is not to do anything but maximize your shareholders' value. That includes your co-founders, your employees, and your investors, and almost everyone else around you. So I don't think anyone on early stage thinks of that. And this is why the ones who thinks of that find it much easier to fundraise, because they're talking to investors in a language that the investors who have other investors can understand.
Absolutely. Going back to what you were saying before about bringing people on board. If you have your own idea, your own plans, and your own vision, I said a few episodes ago in a similar conversation, if you consider yourself a solopreneur, then your partner's an idiot. And which I know might be a bit extreme, but the point I'm trying to make is exactly what you were saying. Going into it alone is sort of talking in an echo chamber, and you need another person who's got the skills you don't even know you don't have.
A healthy startup should have 2 to 4 co-founders.
Yeah. How do you go about if you've had a middle of the night idea of, I know this is great, and you haven't got in mind who's going to help you with it? You didn't develop this with someone else. How do you go about finding the right people to found with?
If you have a great idea and you don't know who's going to help you within your network build it, dump it immediately. It should not exist.
I didn't expect that.
It should not exist, because there is 2 scenarios here. Scenario number 1 is you have never worked before, or you don't have enough of a career to know who can build that with you from out of your ex-colleagues or your colleagues. And in that scenario, and this is not my words, what I'm going to say next is Paul Graham words. Paul Graham is the founder of YC, arguably the most successful early stage investor ever. He said clearly people in their 20s should not be starting companies. Why? There is so much great things in life to do other than dumping all the shit in the world on your head all at once. And I'm so sorry, I don't know many great founders who started their companies in their 20s. And you're going to tell me, but Elon Musk started when he was at uni.
Oh, no, I was not going to say that.
Firstly, you were not at Harvard. Secondly, Mark is clearly upper middle class. Thirdly, Mark was insanely lucky to meet Peter Thiel 6 months or something into his company. Unless you have Peter Thiel on your board, who's going to give you $500 million, and you're at Harvard and an upper middle class, so you have whatever money you need to sustain yourself. And do not do that. And something a lot of people miss about Mark. I don't think people know how technically exceptional Mark is. Mark had built the website, had thousands of people using it before people even knew that he exists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Mark Zuckerberg and the other 20, 21, 23 founders who are insanely limited amount of people have many factors 99% of founders out there will not have. So if you should not be comparing yourself to such an outlier, compare yourself to the majority of other founders, and the ecosystem now have enough data that we know what works, what doesn't work, where are the areas that works, what are the traits that makes great founders great founders.
Absolutely. Now, I know you keep using the word ecosystem. I know it's a word we all use a lot when talking about, well, industries in general and including the world of startups. But what actually do you mean by ecosystem? That could mean competition. It could mean support services. But when it comes to startups, what is the startup ecosystem in your eyes?
The startup ecosystem is the startup's cult. Being in the startup ecosystem means you're a part of a cult that is like 0.0001% of the world that in the last 50 years have been creating most of the jobs in the United States and most of the most valued companies in the stock market. It's an insane niche that exists in a few cities in the world. Many cities in the world claim to have an ecosystem. In my opinion, there are 5 at max. I'm being insanely generous here. The top one that has, let's say, 80% of all activity is definitely San Francisco and the area around it, the Bay Area and what's called Silicon Valley. So an ecosystem have bunch of things, and people struggle to achieve most of them at once. And this is why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. Number one is an abundant and insane amount of engineers, like almost 1 million engineer in a 30 miles radius or something. So number one is engineers, builders, engineers. Ecosystems fundamentally start with builders, not the other way around, not decks. Ecosystems that try to build ecosystems using consultants and business executives have gone nowhere so far. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere, and they will not. There is, if we take into consideration the top 5 cities in the world, and I'm not going to mention all of the names because some of the names are going to get some people so mad at me, which is, I'm sad that that's the case, because all these places deserve all the credit for the great work they're doing. All these places have the best universities in the world, and the best universities at graduating engineers. Live with that. And if you in a city that does not have a great university, and I mean by a great university, something at the bar of Stanford and the bar of UC Berkeley and the bar of Columbia and the bar of New York University and the bar of the University of California, LA, and the other University of Californias that are around LA, you're most likely not going to build a $1 trillion company. So that's number one in the ecosystem. Silicon Valley wouldn't have started if the Stanford was not founded by Jane. There was no chance Silicon Valley would have existed if Stanford was not there. Number one.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Number two is, which is as important as education as is freedom. And freedom comes in so many ways. Freedom in terms of laws, freedom in terms of culture, freedoms in terms of in terms of personal life. if you operate in a city that is not an insanely liberal democracy, let's use more modern terms, a woke kind of a democracy, very, very unlikely you're going to achieve much. Also, because you need people to literally be like, I can do anything. There is no barriers. If Uber started anywhere but Silicon Valley, the founders would have been in jail today.
They might still be.
They might still be. This is exactly what I'm literally saying. If Waymo did not start in Palo Alto, we would have never had a self-driving car. As simple as that. Life is very, very easy. Give people their freedom and give them laws that does not stop them and insanely well enforced. Because so many countries in the world right now, I can claim they have better laws for startups than Silicon Valley.
Interesting.
Not that the devil is in enforcing them.
Yes. So with that in mind, something we've not talked about yet then, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go ahead.
Is then, because we've not talked really that much specifically about the MENA region.
Where you can.
I think given that exactly what you were just saying about how different San Francisco is, how different Silicon Valley is, and how, as we said earlier, it is very much its own thing. There's very much a series of processes and systems one has to navigate. How different is that in the MENA region?
I'm gonna answer that question, but I have to say two more things so that can make this comparison fairly.
This is your platform, sir.
Third thing and one of the most important thing is you have a free economy. The United States is by far the freest economy on earth. And that matters big time because OpenAI can build something that can disrupt Apple using a fraction. I think Apple might maybe spending on its operations more money than all of the money that company like OpenAI have ever had. And still, into today, OpenAI have better AI than Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon. Nuts, crazy. Like 4 multi-trillion dollar companies are unable to compete with a startup with a bunch of crazy kids led by Sam Altman. That would have not been possible without a free market and an economy that allows for it. In the United States, if you have a competitor, you go acquire them. You don't go compete with them. I mean, in the tech sector here. So this is why Microsoft is the main investor in OpenAI, and this is why Apple is the main partner of OpenAI, and this is why Amazon is the main investor in Claude. I think Amazon is also an investor in Zook, or fully on it now.
I feel at this point, Amazon basically is the cloud with AWS.
Yes.
When someone says cloud, in my head, I just assume it's some AWS server.
Microsoft and Google are also doing great, and many others are doing great. I'm just, but yes, AWS is a massive brand. So that's the other thing that the ecosystem should have. I think the fourth. So we said basically education, and builders culture, and then we said we're gonna need to have laws, and it has to be enforced. We're gonna need to have a free market and a free life. And when I take all these things and I want to compare it with the Middle East, we collide in most areas. Number one is we don't have a builder culture in the Middle East. The Middle East economy is run by business executives. The venture capital scene is run by investor bankers who turned venture capitalists. We don't have Vinod Khosla, who founded Sun Microsystem and started his own fund. We don't have Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen, who technically the founders of the internet as we know it. I think between those three, with Vinod, they're the founders of the internet as we know it, who became venture capitalists. Same applies on almost most of major venture capitalists in the Middle East, in Silicon Valley. I would love to see more founders in the Middle East become venture capitalists or angel investors when they achieve success. Unfortunately, we don't have enough success in the Middle East yet for so many founders to have so much money to invest. So that's number one. Number two is builder culture. We're still very much at the main economies in the region run by consultants. When you look at the money that went to McKinsey from the region last year, we're talking about billions of dollars going to McKinsey, going to Deloitte, going to EY, going to BWC. This is not a place where any entrepreneurial activity could happen. Those are not builders. These are advisors.
They're report writers.
I'm honestly sorry. I heard of a VC of an accelerator in the region managed by BWC. What? How? Why?
I've never understood
idea.
how much money people pay to be told how to spend their money.
We're not going to have that. We're not going to have that money for too long, and we don't have that money anyway. Most of the countries in the region are in insane amount of debt. We cannot be borrowing to pay McKinsey. I love McKinsey. I'm a McKinsey forward fellow, but like, no, a builder culture, please. A builder culture and a manufacturing culture, and all like we need to, in the region, to change our mindset completely to building and owning and building for the world.
Yeah, and I would argue as well that you are asking people from the outside to come in and tell you how your own ecosystem should work if it were to copy the ecosystems from other parts of the world. But actually, if anything, you should be telling them how it works.
That is a bit debatable, because I don't believe the way the ecosystem works in Silicon Valley should be different the way the ecosystem works anywhere else in the world. Some ecosystems have industry advantages. Some ecosystems have certain preferences, but at the core, venture capital today, which is the fuel of the ecosystem, is pretty much a science now. I don't think any ecosystem that try any other way but San Francisco way will actually achieve much success. Because you can drop one or two things from the great things Silicon Valley have, but you cannot drop it all.
Yeah.
You can likely drop most things, but you cannot drop the builder culture, you cannot drop the best education, you cannot drop the laws that are well enforced. Drop whatever else you want. Drop the giving back culture that the Bay Area has. Drop the friendliness. Drop whatever you want. But you cannot drop the first three. If you drop these, it's impossible to go anywhere. And I think the biggest challenge in the Middle East today is that we don't have a builder culture. A mainstream builder culture. Like, we don't wake up, we have to wake up in the region or in the cities that we want to become entrepreneurial cities. And I think we need to start thinking of building cities in the region that are entrepreneurial at its core. This is why how the Bay Area was technically built. Let's build. What's wrong with a city within Dubai or within Abu Dhabi or within some region in Saudi that has 100,000 people or 200,000 people, some sort of a village? The Bay Area at the end of the day is a bunch of villages. They're not really, like, apart from the two main streets in San Francisco, it feels very much like a quite modern village, honestly.
That's why I feel so comfortable there. As we established,
with the highest density of millionaires and billionaires in the world. Just to be fair.
Oh yeah. To me, it very much feels like, I know you've visited here before. It feels like Brighton in the UK, if America did it, would be San Francisco.
Yes, yeah, literally that. The most liberal city in the UK, arguably.
Yeah.
and the most inclusive, also arguably. And this is another thing you're talking about the region, and I wanna make this part about the region very, very comprehensive. So number one, building culture has to expand and has to become mainstream. Two, I would argue that it's time for the region to have its entrepreneurial city. Call it the startup city. Call it the you know what, the valley of anything that is culturally related to the Arab region. Yeah. And third thing is, we need to become inclusive. We need to offer people citizenships, nothing below that. The best engineers everywhere in the world should be moving to that city, knowing that they're going to get all the support and all the job security and all the legal security. If I'm not a citizen in a country, I'm never in any major security. I've seen some efforts from some countries in the region toward that, but it's still insanely narrow and insanely minor, and still very much focused also on either celebrities or business people. I need builders. I need 1,000 math scientists to move from China to the region. I need 1,000 engineers to move to the region. And these people need to look at the region at their infinite home. Give them passports, give them whatever they want, let them build. I think the other thing in the region that we don't have is patience. We lack patience to the greatest extent possible. If we look at the greatest successes in the Bay Area, these were not a typical 10 years venture capital cycles. OpenAI is not a typical 10 years venture capital cycle. It's not even a startup yet. Like, it's still an NGO that is in front of court to change to become a C Corp. Vinod Khosla the other day, I was with him, and he said, I had to write my LBs an apology letter telling them I most probably have wasted tens, if not more, of millions of their dollars, because he literally invested in a charity, in an NGO. This kind of, let's forget about OpenAI. That's a very modern story. The first investor in Google was not incorporated, and he wanted to give them $500,000. And he wrote the check, Google Inc., and signed it. And they were like, but we don't have an incorporation. He was like, whenever you guys incorporate the company, go cash the check. This level of risk-taking and patience, how many years it took. Investors could have forced Mark Zuckerberg to sell the company. Investors could have forced Google or sued Google to sell to Yahoo for $3 billion. That was an insane amount of returns on their investment at that point. How big is Google now? $2 trillion. How big is Facebook now? $1.7, $1.6 trillion. Some of those VCs still have their shares. This is how, I'm so sorry, but this is how you support founders who are technically speaking prophets. The largest religion in history of the world is Facebook.
Quite. Yeah.
3.2 billion users of Facebook who use it more than the time they spend praying. Reality
Absolutely.
is, average customer of Meta spends approximately around 4 hours a day. There is no one who prays 4 hours a day, unless you're sitting in a temple or a church all the day. But reality is, that is a religion that Mark Zuckerberg started. Same applies on Airbnb. You're trusting to sleep next to someone.
And by the way, just to interject there, if you also include the amount of time additional time spent on Instagram and even more time spent on WhatsApp, which are all Meta.
Yeah.
They're essentially,
that is about
your
to
analogy,
become 24/7.
Subsets.
This is about to become 24/7 now with Reality Labs Meta glasses. Which is, honestly, I'm insanely excited for the amount of functionality and the amount of AI it carries now. And man, to be honest, this is we can also go talk about Google and go talk about Apple and go talk about many others. I don't want to talk here about the stories that sounds very far-fetched. Google is very far-fetched today, but Stripe is not. Airbnb is not. Uber is not. OpenAI is not. OpenAI could possibly have been an Arab country, in an Arab country.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
We just have seen the Wiz acquisition of $32 billion to Google. That is a company that's built in a country that very much has similar, in ways, dynamics to market size or dynamics to the region. So all what I'm saying is we need to have patience in the region. We need to have a much higher risk appetite. And most importantly, we have to build for the world. Right now, every Middle Eastern company you will interview will tell you, we're solving a problem in Egypt. We're solving a problem in Saudi. We're solving a problem in the UAE. No, this is not what a startup is. This is a Me Too. Not even a Me Too. Some Me Toos are great. Zoho is a Me Too and serves the whole world. Facebook itself was a Me Too at some point.
Yeah.
Google search was a Me Too. Google Maps was a Me Too. Waze was a Me Too.
Who doesn't remember that? If you were alive at the time, I remember searching Alta Vista.
Yes, thank you. Yahoo. Technically, Google was a much better, very much a Me Too of.
The irony as well was at the
Spotify.
time its whole. Do you remember its big selling point as well? When you first saw Google, you're like, oh my God, it's like, do you remember? It's like searching the way it used to be. You put in a thing and it just gives you the answer.
Yes,
it doesn't put loads of other rubbish on the screen you don't care about. And now what does it look like?
No. We can also talk about examples that came from much smaller ecosystems. Skype, Spotify. We can go on and on. Spotify was a Me Too to Napster. A legal Me Too.
It's on its way back. Did you hear about that? That's coming back shortly.
Yeah.
Good luck for the 5th time.
And so all what I'm saying is, we have to build for the world. Skype was not built for Sweden or for Estonia. It was built for the world. And Spotify did not try. Spotify is the naming sponsor of FC Barcelona Stadium, Camp Nou in Barcelona. Why? Because they're a global brand who works with other global brands. They use the T-shirt to now add Taylor Swift, not someone from their country. They did not went and sponsor a stadium in their country. I don't think I ever heard them talking about their country. I always thought they're from the US until I met the founder. And I was like, oh, wait a second. A great company built out of Silicon Valley. Outside of Silicon Valley. I was like, okay. So all I'm saying is, build their culture, great education, laws that are well enforced, being inclusive when it's come to talent, and when it's come to co-founders, and it's come to people moving to the region and offering them citizenships, nothing below that. And then building for the world. And building for the world is something that we have seriously need to consider in the region. There is a few startups like Instabug, Gameball, and Encorta, and those startups are doing a great job out of huge teams that are based in the region.
So would you say that they're your current hot picks to keep an eye on in the startup world right now?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
If someone said if you're looking at some startups right now in the region to keep an eye on that you think are actually going to go places, would you say those were amongst them? Who are the companies you're excited by at the moment?
I think I'm excited the most about Tabby. I think they're solving a huge problem in the region. They're the 5th largest buy now pay later in the world now.
So 5th largest
buy now pay later in the world.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't think many people know that, but they're about to go for an IPO. So I don't know. I think it's too late other than buying some of their shares in the stock market when they go public. And I'm very happy for them and for their some of their investors, good friends, and I'm like very, very proud of what they have built. I think I'm very, very excited about that company. I think I'm very, very excited about Gameball. That's a company founded by an Egyptian founder that literally serves the world from day one. They help you with your loyalty program. I'm very, very excited about Instabug, which is also an originally or technically an Egyptian founder who I think still have most of his people in Egypt, but he have a massive office in Silicon Valley and just hired a CEO and just stepped down and hired another person to run the company. And that's an insane level of maturity that we rarely see in the region. See, these are three companies that I really, really like and I'm excited about. I think there is a few household names that people are excited about to go public, like Foodex. I think Foodex is.
Oh, I know Foodex. Yeah. I think I use them in the UK. I think I've seen them on a couple of sites.
I think they're trying to sell. I think they're trying to go global, and they're even starting their own fund, which is something cool.
They're food delivery people, right?
No, I think you're talking about Deliveroo.
No, Foodex.
No, Foodex is a system that helps you manage your restaurant. It's a CRM tool for restaurants.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
And my information is not well up to date, so they might have expanded to other industries, but they initially started as something like that. I'm very excited about what the guys at Ninja are building. They're the ex-founders of Hunger Station. Yeah, these are some of the. I think these are some of the companies I'm quite excited about.
That's right. Well, you heard it here first, then, folks. Before
no,
we
I
wrap
think
up,
I think these also are household names. I don't think anyone would. To be fair.
Okay, well then it's not maybe a lukewarm tip at best. But with that, okay, we've got to wrap up because we've actually been talking a phenomenally long time, which is fantastic. Thank you for that.
No, my pleasure has been.
Thank
you for having me.
You're more than welcome. You're welcome at any time. This has been fascinating. That I think it's been on my list of questions that we put together in advance, and we still haven't got around to asking because we've just been so busy seeing where this conversation takes us, which is great. But given that you've spent basically the last decade or so working with and designing accelerator programs across the MENA region, if you could take everything you've learned from that and sort of distill it down into like a first aid kit for new startups, what would the essential components of that kit be?
That's another podcast kind of question.
Oh, I told you I'd come up with it. We'd compiled this in advance. This one. This is very much not an improvised question.
Okay,
but I didn't want to leave it behind.
Okay, I'm gonna do my best to answer it in the fastest way possible. For an early stage company to be in, I would say in a healthy place. For an early stage startup to be in a healthy place to achieve success. One is, remember the things we mentioned in the beginning? Number one is a technical co-founder or preferably a technical founder. Two is enough money to sustain the founders for a year on the cheapest food possible. Nothing fancy. Three is agree on roles and agree on equities and everything the founders eventually end up fighting over. And everyone have their shares vested with a cliff. Because if we agree on someone taking 20% as a co-founder, and that sounds low, him having this 20% immediately not vested over the next 4 or 5 years will mean that if he leaves tomorrow, you have 20% of your company and he sits most likely on your board, and good luck getting the company to move anywhere with that, and good luck to convince investors to give me your money while 20% of your company is owned by someone who does not show up to company. So I think these three. 4 is you're a prophet. If you do not believe you're a prophet, who is about to change the way people live their lives.
Oh,
Entrepreneurship.
P-R-O-H-P-H-E-T. So
Yes, a
P-R-O-P-H-E-T,
prophet,
not
a
F-I-T.
prophet. I'm not going to name other prophets because I don't want to get into trouble. I'm just saying a prophet in a business metaphor here who's going to change the way people live their lives. Entrepreneurship is not for you.
Yes.
Four is what we call founders market fit. If you are 22 years old who never worked in banking, don't come and tell me you're going to disrupt the central bank.
Yes.
Very unlikely, near impossible for you to do that because you don't even know how a bank works.
Same is true. You cannot be a management consultant under 30. It's just not actually possible. You can't have done enough management.
No. You can. McKinsey have proved it right. PwC have proved it right. They're making billions of dollars out of fresh grads. Don't get me started. So have some sort of industry experience. There is nothing wrong with spending 5 years at the company you want to disrupt. Let's say you really, really dislike a company, you want to end them from existence. Go work there for 5 years, know everything about the industry, know everything about them, and then send them out of business.
You need to understand what you're working with. This happens so often that people come in, even to a new job where they're taking over a department or something. You'll see it all the time. People come in and I've done it myself. I've made this mistake too. You want to rip up the book and start fresh because you're the new guy.
I've done it many times, and I sink the boat.
Yeah,
and
6 months later, you're like, oh, that's why they did that.
Yeah, the boat is sinking, and I'm inside it. And I don't know how to get off it. And anyway, this is not the moment for sharing regrets. But
a little bit. It's a podcast.
A little bit. The final thing is, and it's a combination of two things. Do not solve your mom's problems and solve for the world. I think if you have all these things together, you should be fine. A technical founder who is finding a business co-founder, or the other way around, technical is a must. Enough money to sustain yourself for a year, solving a problem for the world, and not solving your mom's problem, as I mentioned earlier. What was the fifth thing? Have industry experience. Founders market fit.
These are fantastic words of wisdom and a perfect way to wind up today's conversation.
I'm not sure if this is wisdom. I just want to say a disclaimer. These are opinions, and the ecosystem we operate in is a very, very opinionated place. And there's people who will tell you exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. Just make sure to take the things that make sense from what I'm saying and the things that make sense from what they're saying, and apply a combination of everyone in your case, and hopefully you're going to be successful.
I'm sure. Well, on that beautifully humble note, one last thing before we go. This, of course, you've been talking about founders and entrepreneurship all this time, so now is your chance. Plug away. Tell us what you got going on, where people can get in touch if they want to find out more, all that stuff. Go.
I think the easiest way is LinkedIn for sure. I'm pretty active over there. I think it's the only social media that makes any sense now, and an advice to all founders: be on LinkedIn. I think it's the most growing platform that makes sense, and I don't have to dance in a video to grow on it, which is great. That's number one. That's the easiest way to get in touch. Mo at startupgrind.com and mo at pitlane.ventures.com. Sorry, mo at pitlane.ventures. That's it. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. In terms of what's going on in my life right now, I'm at this moment of figuring out what I'm doing next, because I recently moved to Silicon Valley, and I'm trying to raise. I'm trying to raise my own fund. So if you are interested in investing in a venture capitalist who's as crazy as a bunch of as founders, please get in touch. So I'm trying to raise a fund to invest in early stage companies, and And historically, I've managed several accelerators and several programs, and also several communities. I started my career at Techstars for doing Startup Weekend, and this is how I got into the
Yeah, I've
ecosystem.
done a startup weekend. They're amazing.
They are the
Literally like
best.
2013, I did mine.
I did mine is also in, I think, 2012 or 2013, something like that. And
My team came second.
I my first startup weekend, I I was miserable. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. That was my first introduction to anything that has to do with
Oh,
entrepreneurship in my
really?
life. And then my second, and then I joined the team. Like I became an organizer. This is how I got involved in the ecosystem in the first place. That was the first thing I've ever done in the ecosystem, organizing startup weekend hackathons. And then
Oh,
my
cool.
second startup weekend as a participant, I won. My third, I got in the second place, I guess, something like that. But I'm insanely in love with hackathons. So this is where I think this is where most of great people I know started their entrepreneurial career, because the hackathon is simply the first thing you do if you have an idea. You basically walk into a hackathon like, guys, I have this crazy idea. Anyone wants to join? And then you spend
Yeah.
the next, and then
Same with game jams that I've done in the past.
yeah. Have you done a game jam? Wow.
Several, yeah. I've done like I used. So, sorry, I know we're going off on one. I do apologize for this, listeners.
No,
But
it's
hey,
fine.
whatever. I've also been like a sound designer and for the video games industry in the past. And the way
Oh,
I got
nice.
into it, exactly that. I did
Wow,
game jams
nice.
and said, "Oh, I can do sound effects," and that was how I got experience.
By the way, a game jam is simply a hackathon, but for game developers.
Yes.
Just for
Well
everyone
done.
to
Thank you for doing my job there. That was good. Seeing as I was being lax. But anyway, we have now been going for nearly 50 minutes. So that's wonderful.
Wow.
It's about time we wrap this conversation up, seeing as it was supposed to be half an hour. But that just shows how much fun it's been talking to you.
It's been fun, for sure. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much for hanging out with us today.
No, the pleasure is all mine, and thank you for being a great host, and thank you for all the humor and putting up with me, and it's lovely to
Hardly.
it's lovely
I
to
wouldn't know
be
any other way to do it.
yeah.
But with that, it's time we say goodbye. So thank you, Mo, so much for joining us today. And thank you, of course, viewers and listeners, for joining us. Don't forget to check out more tech news and entrepreneurship info over at the AraGeek.com website. And I'll see you on the next episode of Founder's Voice. And until then, thank you so much. Take care and goodbye.